you want to hear from an owner? And I'll tell you, I think right about now would be a good time to hear from Jed York. And the reason I'm saying that is because I would love to ask Jed a simple question, and that is, what is your role in the Brandon Aiyuk contract negotiations? It's as simple as that. Where is Jed York during this entire process, and where is he coming from with all this? Because I actually do believe that, would you agree with me that Jed York is the one person who could end all of this immediately?
Well, yeah, he's the owner of the team.
Then why isn't he?
He should have talked yesterday.
What was yesterday?
Well, yesterday was the first time we got a detail about something that needed to be ironed out with ownership approval. That was the Jordan Schultz report. Ownership approval. Okay, well, now the owner is being dragged into this because there's clearly something that's at his doorstep that needs to be ironed out. I don't know, whatever it is. Yeah, I want to hear from Jed York. I
don't necessarily believe that, though.
What, that it's up to him?
Yeah, that he's looking at something and he's deciding yes or no. I don't. That's the point. I have no idea what is going on. But I'm wondering if 49er fans right now think it would be a good idea or a bad idea for Jed York to, jump on with the media or hold a press conference and say something about the situation. I do kind of think it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to update the fan base on where this team sits with those two players 16 days or 18 days from the opener with a team that's expected to make a Super Bowl run. Is it time, if you're a 49er fan, are you ready to hear Jed York say something about this situation? Because I think if he did talk, it would give an indication of how long this thing might go.
Oh, what he needs to come out and say is, we're not talking about this anymore.
What would that do?
We are discussing and negotiating with Brandon Aiyuk behind closed doors.
Right.
That's all you need to know. I think one of the reasons why this has dragged on so long and why people are worried or frustrated or just plain pissed off is because of all these, everything that comes out every single day. It's nauseating.
It is.
I mean, seriously, we were doing the crossover yesterday with Willard and Dibbs, and this report comes out about just a few more details need to be ironed out. Like, what does that mean? And I don't think it's just Brandon. It can't just be one side that has made this impossible to figure out. Now, might it be mostly Aiyuk's fault? That's a possibility. I don't know. We know as much about Brandon Aiyuk's contract negotiations, it feels like, as we know about Trent Williams' holdout. Only it's been played far more out in the public eye, which has just kept everyone off what we're supposed to be talking about, which is football.
Veggie Delight on the YouTube chat. Lynch can address all the contract stuff. Well, that's kind of my point.
I don't know, though.
I don't either.
Like, I don't think Lynch really deals with that stuff.
Really? I think he's aware of everything. But for all we know, Jed York has drawn a line in the sand saying, I'm not paying Aiyuk that. Period. End of story. Period. But they can't say that in there about the owner. So they've got to assume that in and of it, they've got to kind of assume that they're the ones who are drawing the line in the sand. Maybe it isn't. Like, who's Kyle? Like, if Kyle Shanahan is frustrated.
I think he is.
Who's he frustrated with?
Everyone. Probably.
Well, then, maybe it's time for Jed York to try to let people know as much as possible what's going on, even if he says we're prepared to start the season without Brandon.
Well, he's the only guy we haven't heard from. I mean, we never hear from Parag Malate, right. But he's the only guy we haven't heard from. And the last time we heard from him, he was talking about his quarterback resetting the market, it feels like. So
true.
Jed York, look, but what is he going to add to this discussion? How much clarity?
Asking that question.
How much clarity can he really give us?
I think he could give a lot. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about details, but he could give us a sense of where we're at with this thing. Are we closer to the end than the beginning? Can you put into terms what it means if you're closer now than in a month? I mean, basically, just ask him all the questions that every single fan has and every single anxiety they have and ask him to address it.
Well, I'll tell you who would appreciate it. I think Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch would.
They might.
Finally, they're the ones that don't have to answer unanswerable questions.
Exactly. And I wonder if that's part of it too, that they realize nothing's changed and they have to go out there day in and day out. And maybe they want to say, look, Jed's not signing that check. What do you want me to tell you? Or Brandon's not signing that check. What do you want me to tell you? Or, we're still not worried. Anything.
Or we find out that York is pissed off with the way that Aiyuk has handled this situation.
Exactly.
But if you ask about him, you got to ask about Trent.
Exactly. Or maybe, can you compare what's going on with Brandon to what went on last year with Bosa? Is there a difference in the tenor of the discussions? I don't know. I think it's a fair question to ask whether or not it's time for Jed York to address the media or to at least address these two elephants in the room, rats on the table. Let's go to Mike. Mike's in Santa Clara. Hey, Mike, how you doing, man?
Good, guys. Hey, thanks, guys. I feel like the reason why Jed York isn't saying anything yet is I think there is something, rat on the table, if you want to say, about both of them actually being, if not one of them at least, being ready and just finalizing the details, whether that's Trent or Aiyuk. We already know the Aiyuk contract is pretty much set in stone, but I'm wondering if Trent Williams is going to be getting done before Aiyuk at this point. I'm not going off of what Deshaun Jackson is saying or anything like that. I just feel like, he's saying don't worry about it. So it does give me a little bit of optimism, but I'm just trying to figure out, is he waiting until at least one contract is being done and then having an update on the other? But, with the Aiyuk contract, with how long it's going on, Steiny, I don't disagree with you. Maybe he's just tired of hearing about the whole Aiyuk thing at this point because he's being so stubborn and holding out. At this point, you might as well just trade the guy, even though they don't want to, and I don't want to trade the guy either.
Right.
I mean, he's our best receiver at that point. So, I just think he's holding out, waiting to see exactly what's going to go on with here and out with, between him, Parag, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. And I guarantee, Kyle is tired of all of this. He just wants his game players out there,
I think you're right.
That's all I had to say, guys.
No, I appreciate it. And some people on the YouTube chat, if Jed York spoke, you'd be the first to criticize him, Steiny. What else we got here? Why would the owner need to speak over the GM? Well, I'll just give you an example.
Well, Lynch has spoke. He just hasn't said anything.
Right. Here's my example, and I get that they're different people, but it doesn't matter. When you hear Mike Dunleavy talk about the Golden State Warriors, that's one thing. When you hear Joe Lacob talk about the Warriors, that's another. It just is. We all know it. So when I hear John Lynch talk, that's one thing. If I'd hear Jed York talk right now, that would be another, because it's a different level. It just is. It's coming straight from the one person that we know can make any decision he wants. That's why I think it's fair to ask, if and when would you like to see Jed York at least talk about this, or you don't need to hear from him. But you know what? Here's the other reason that I'd like to hear from Jed York is because he's not quite as polished as John Lynch. And he may tell you more than he really wants to tell you. But so what? What if he did? What if he says, man, we never anticipated Brandon Aiyuk was going to be this much of a problem or this much of a challenge? Okay. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is that he can't do that every time there's somebody that's in this situation.
Correct.
Okay, let's take Joe Lacob, for example.
All right.
How many times has he spoke this summer?
Well, not as much as he has in the past.
Why is that?
Because
there's uncertainty, I think. I also think it's because he didn't speak after. Now, stories have come out about him, and there's been quotes and references and sources, but he didn't talk after Klay Thompson got traded to the Dallas Mavericks. You'd think that you would hear from an owner after a fabric of your franchise is removed, and he didn't.
Well, I hear what you're saying there, but I think there's a little bit of a difference, and it is.
And Joe Lacob is someone that is not afraid to talk.
Exactly. And that's why, to me, I feel like there was a reason Joe Lacob didn't talk between the time they were eliminated and mid-July. And I think that's because he's very honest. I think it's because the team discouraged him, or the front office and the PR department discouraged him from doing it because he probably was upset and thought the team was going to do better. So I understand Joe Lacob taking a few months off before he talks to the media. I'm just asking 49er fans, is there a time that Jed York should come out and maybe talk more in detail about what's going on with these players? And here's the other thing I would just say. If it's true that a lot of people believe this is their make or break year, that's another reason why I would want him to talk, is because we all know how important this particular year is, because they gotta try to win a Super Bowl, and this is severely hampering their ability to do it. I don't know. Maybe people don't want to hear from Jed York, but
no, I think people do want to hear from Jed York. I just don't think that. I don't think that'd be a smart play by him, honestly. Like from his standpoint, I don't know what I'd be able to add to whatever's going on here.
Yeah, I think if you ask 49er fans what they want the most when talking about Trent Williams or Brandon Aiyuk is, can you give us some kind of estimate? How about this? Is there any possibility that one or both those guys is not playing against the Jets? Now, they probably say, well, I didn't get a chance. But even from that kind of question and answer, I think we get a sense of, wow, they may play the Jets without Trent Williams. Are you telling me they're going to play against the New York Jets without Trent Williams?
But what I think we'd learn is what we've kind of been picking up this whole summer, which is they don't know. And I know that yesterday we talked about what great leaders are, and Steve Kerr gave his definition of a great leader, which is someone that's aware that they might not have all the answers. But when you're the owner of a team and you reveal, unintentionally perhaps, that you don't have all the answers, well, then more doubt creeps in from your fan base. More doubt creeps in maybe from your players. I'm sure there's a lot of players on this team that don't know what's going on with Brandon Aiyuk. And they're the ones that have to go out there and play the Jets, not us. You and I are just going to talk about it. But those guys in the locker room, I'm not sure they even understand where these negotiations are at and if their wide receiver is going to be there. Because Kyle Shanahan can keep someone like Brock Purdy up to date with all the information that he knows, but it also sounds like the goal line's being continuously moved, and we don't know who's moving it. It could be Brandon Aiyuk. It could be another team that's calling about Aiyuk that wants to trade for him and that's willing to offer this or offer that. It could be the Niners that are waking up and saying, well, damn, Brandon, you're busting our you-know-what here, man. Like, we can't give you this money or this is what we're offering. You got to figure out whether you want it or not. If the goalpost gets continuously moved as a player, I have no idea what to expect. And if Brock Purdy can't expect Trent Williams or BA to be there week one, well, then I'm not sure what the owner coming out and telling us is going to be really worth. Because I don't think inside the building right now they really know where things are at.
Let me ask you this. Has John Lynch been asked this question? Why is Trent Williams not at training camp?
Has he been asked that?
Yeah, I don't think he has. Like, we
About
don't.
Trent.
Well, I'm just saying that everybody's assuming why, because he wants more money, but do we know that for a fact?
There was the Fowler report from the summer that there were whispers that Williams was unhappy with his current deal.
Right.
I think that's the information we have to go off of right now.
And to me, I'd like to hear John Lynch, or I don't need to hear Jed on this one, but can you give us a reason why Trent's not there? And at least he'd have to say, well, we're working through some contract things. Okay, so now we know it is about money. I get it that it's probably 90% about money, but we don't even know that for sure. And maybe we don't deserve to know it, but I don't know. I think sometimes fans do deserve to know more than the information they're getting because they're important.
What I know is they got 6 more days until they got to figure out their 53-man, and they got until September 9th to figure out what team they're going to put on the field against the New York Jets. And I just find it very strange that the New York Jets, who are not the most buttoned-up franchise in the world, have had a holdout also this summer and just nipped it in the bud and just said, we're not trading this guy. You know, we traded for Hassan Reddick this offseason. He wants to hold out. He wants to trade. We're not giving it to him. I mean, like the Niners right now are a bit of a circus. I think they are a circus right now. And I think that's the reason why we want to hear from the owner. It's the same reason why I think Giants fans want to hear from the Johnsons. It's the same reason why Warriors fans want to hear from Lacob at particular points. It's because we've already heard everyone else speak, and they haven't given us anything. And so there's only one person we believe or have the hope that can provide some semblance of clarity to the situation, and it's the only guy that hasn't talked.
This from the YouTube chat, Sean John Steiny. Last time we had a vocal Jed York, he fudged everything. He fudged everything up.
Be careful.
The worst possible way, and he had fans and you radio people calling for him to fire himself. You want that again? Listen, I think there's a big difference between a vocal Jed York and a Jed York that addresses some outstanding situations that everybody's concerned with. Nobody wants Jed to do a weekly press conference. But I don't know. I'm just asking 49er fans, are there times, and is this one of them, where you would want to hear from Jed York, or wouldn't it even be worth it? I think it could be worth it because I'm interested to know what his role is in all this. For all we know, it's Jed York who has drawn a line in the sand that's preventing Parag Marathe and the 49ers from coming to terms with Aiyuk, and maybe it's something that they're willing to do, but Jed York's not.
Well, the thing that he could provide clarity on is that one detail from yesterday's report that there are things that need to be ironed out with ownership's approval. Now, does that mean it's his approval? Does that mean that there's so much money that they have to pay this guy that he's got to run it by everyone else who's involved? Is it the financial? Is it Parag Marathe? Who is it? When they say ownership approval, is that you, Jed? That's the question to me if there is one. when there needs to be ownership approval for the final details of this deal that's been dragging on for 6 months too long, is it you? Are you the one that's saying yes or no? And if so, why?
Yeah. Again, is it a big deal? I don't know. At what point does this get serious enough for York to address it?